So you've got this dream, right? A dedicated workshop right in your own basement. It's awesome. But before you even think about making that first cut, we got to talk about a hidden danger: the air you're going to be breathing. In this explainer, we are going to lay out a proven plan to turn that dream into a safe and healthy reality.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll peel back the curtain on those hidden dangers lurking in your dream workshop. Then, we're going to dive into some surprising science about how your house actually breathes. We'll look at why the usual fixes people try just don't cut it. And finally, we are going to build a pro-level action plan to get this done right.
You know the vision. You can see it perfectly. All your tools are laid out, the workbench is spotless, and that first project is just waiting for you. But then, winter rolls in. You fire up the saw or pop open a can of stain, and bam, reality hits. Suddenly the air is thick with dust and fumes, and you realize pretty quick that just cracking a window isn't going to be a real solution.
And this brings us to the big question, the one so many people ask before they even hammer the first nail. Is putting a workshop in the basement even a good idea to begin with?
The answer is absolutely yes. But, and this is a huge but, it comes with a major condition. You have to understand that a basement isn't just another room in your house. It's basically a concrete box buried in the ground. And that means you have to control its very unique environment.
Yeah, see, we're fighting a lot more than just a little sawdust here. These are your 5 invisible enemies: microscopic dust that gets deep in your lungs, chemical fumes from all your finishes, humidity that becomes a breeding ground for mold, and even seriously dangerous gases like radon and carbon monoxide that can get pulled right into your home.
So you might be wondering, how does all that nasty stuff get into your house anyway? Well, to really solve this problem, you first have to understand the basic physics going on. Your house is a whole system, and especially in the winter, it is totally dominated by one powerful invisible force. And that force is called the stack effect. The easiest way to think about it is this: your house is a giant chimney. All day long, that warm air you're paying to heat is rising up and leaking out through tiny cracks in your attic. This creates a constant upward draft.
And here's the consequence of that stack effect. It creates a vacuum in the lowest part of your house, your basement. We call this negative pressure. Your house is literally trying to suck in replacement air from wherever it can find it. And that includes pulling it straight through the dirt and the concrete foundation.
Okay, so now that we know your basement is acting like a giant vacuum cleaner, let's look at these so-called fixes people usually try. You're about to see why these common ideas are not just incomplete, they can actually be pretty dangerous. This is so important to understand. You know, a simple exhaust fan, like for a bathroom, seems like a no-brainer. But all that fan does is make that negative pressure problem way worse. It could start pulling in radon or even backdraft carbon monoxide from your furnace. And an air filter, look, it's great for capturing dust that's already in the air, but it's not ventilation. It doesn't bring in any fresh air.
I love this analogy because it just nails it. A filter is like a kidney. Its job is to clean the blood that's already there. But you still need lungs, ventilation, to bring in fresh oxygen and get rid of the bad stuff like CO2 and chemical fumes. You absolutely have to have both.
So if all those common fixes are a bust, what's the right way to do this? Well, we have to shift our thinking from a simple DIY fix to a real engineering solution. The answer is a professional-grade concept called balanced ventilation. The idea is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. A balanced system pushes stale, polluted air out while bringing fresh air in, and it does it at the exact same time and at the exact same rate. So if 80 cubic feet of air per minute goes out, 80 cubic feet comes in. The pressure inside stays perfectly neutral, no vacuum, no danger. This is usually done with a machine called a heat recovery ventilator, or an HRV. And this is where the magic happens. Inside the HRV, the two air streams, the stale air going out and the fresh air coming in, pass by each other without ever mixing. A special core transfers the heat from your warm exhaust air over to the fresh, cold incoming air. The result? You get fresh air without just throwing away all the money you spent to heat it in the first place. Now, you might also hear about something called an ERV, an energy recovery ventilator. Think of it as the next level up. While an HRV just transfers heat, an ERV transfers both heat and moisture. This makes it a much better year-round solution for most places, because it helps keep your workshop from getting bone dry in the winter or too sticky in the summer. All right, we've talked about the science, we've talked about the tech. Now let's put it all together into a simple, clear, three-part action plan that you can use to build a truly safe and healthy workshop.
I want you to think of your workshop's air quality like a three-legged stool. It absolutely needs all three of these pillars to be stable and safe. You can't just pick and choose, you can't skip a step. And pillar number 1, the absolute first thing you have to do is control moisture. You cannot ventilate your way out of a damped basement. It just doesn't work. Before you do anything else, you have to get that space dry and keep it dry, probably with a good dehumidifier. This stops mold before it starts and keeps your expensive tools from turning into a pile of rust. Okay, step 2 is about avoiding the single biggest mistake people make, trying to make one machine do 3 completely different jobs. You need 3 separate dedicated systems. A dust collector to grab the big chips right at the saw, an air filtration unit for that superfine dust floating around, and finally, your ERV or HRV for actual ventilation. That's what manages oxygen, fumes, and dangerous gases. And this right here, this is the beautiful, elegant solution to that classic windowless basement problem. An ERV or HRV doesn't need windows at all. All it needs is 2 small ducts running to the outside, one pulling fresh air in, and one pushing stale air out. It gives your workshop something way better than a window, a constant, controlled supply of fresh, filtered, preconditioned air. And look, don't let the technical side scare you off. A really simple calculation can tell you exactly what size unit you're going to need. You just figure out the volume of your workshop, decide how many times you want to change out the air every hour, and the math tells you the CFM, the fan power you need to keep that air safe.
So let's just run through the final checklist one more time. Remember, this is a complete system. Number 1, get the space totally dry. Number 2, capture all the dust, big chips at the source and fine dust in the air. And number 3, ventilate for your own health with a balanced system. You need all 3 for a workshop that's truly safe. And really, that's what this all boils down to. Building a workshop is an amazing investment in your home, in your skills, in your passion. But you have a choice to make. Are you going to build it on a foundation of health and safety, or are you going to build it on a foundation that could become a serious long-term hazard for you and your family? The choice is yours.